Hi, guys. I want to talk about the new Mandalorian teaser trailer and poster that came out and give you my thoughts on the artwork. So here you go. Here's an example. So here we have the new Mandalorian and Grogu poster, and I want to give you my thoughts on what I think about the poster. But first, I will say that I am excited to see what happens with this movie. The Mandalorian is one of the best things to come out from the Disney Star Wars. Did not like season three of The Mandalorian and had some issues with Boba Fett and the other series that have come out, but I do like the character, and Grogu's cute and fun. Got nothing against them. I also really like Jon Favreau and think he's a great director, so I'm excited to see what he can do. That being said, I want to try to look at this poster objectively and give you my thoughts on what I think about the design. Now, as you look at this poster, you can see it has a lot of the swashbuckling elements of those Saturday morning serials. For example, if you look back at old Flash Gordon posters or other Saturday morning serial posters that are out there, you can see how usually you've got a character, bold text curved and coiled around the characters, and these little statements of an amazing, strange new world adventure and all that stuff. Very commonplace. In fact, this is this is some of the content that inspired George Lucas to even create Star Wars in the first place. So I do get a sense of that homage going back to that time period in this poster. Um, that being said, just take a look at these posters. Even being made, almost, 80, 90 years ago, they have a much more cohesive look, I think, than this does. And if you look at it a little bit closely, um, you can start to pick apart some of the pieces. Also, it's hard to top the best poster artist of all time, Drew Struzan. And anything that is done now, unfortunately or fortunately, is going to be compared to what Drew Struzan could do. And Drew Struzan was amazing. Uh, Hands down, the best movie poster artist of all time. And if you look at his work, everything from capturing a beautiful license to the license likeness. Um, he did have the license. Anyways, the likeness plus just the action, the color tone, the texture, everything that was done was beautiful and cohesive. And I just love the way he could blend faces and figure out interesting compositions that were dynamic and interesting. I don't get that here. I don't see that. So I do have some issues with the technique and the composition, let alone the text. I'm sorry, but the text is boring. Um, I see where they're going, but even the old-fashioned text that was handmade and put together on a poster print back then is superior to this. I can see the font. Star Wars is kind of slapped on there. Everything just looks kind of weak. I'm sorry. All right. Now, if you look a little closer, that's where it kind of falls apart for me too. This definitely looks like a Photoshop digital painting. Now, I don't have a problem with digital. I work digitally. I love painting in Photoshop. I love painting in Procreate and other digital programs. But this one really feels like a painted over photo to me. I also, the blurs, there's all kinds of blurs. Now, I get it. I love brushstrokes. I love seeing that. But something really good about a Drew Struzan is that he knew when to show a brushstroke and then when to tighten it up. And this one, it's just too loose. It's just not holding together. It has a weird black outline, which feels, frankly, a little AI. Um, Again, I don't know who made this poster. I could be totally picking on somebody. Sorry, but I don't like it, especially when I've seen so much better come out of places like BLT, one of the movie poster companies that Disney's hired over the years. So, really, not impressed. Now let's talk about the composition. The composition to me works in the sense that you've got either a kind of a rule of thirds grid working on it or a dynamic angled pyramid shape. You can see how different pieces of the poster fit into those areas. They're organized and structured in the right way. So things fit and it feels balanced. And they made a lot of room in the middle for the text. And maybe that's what kind of bothers me too. Um, they are just putting it all out there that if you didn't know, this movie is about the Mandalorian and Grogu. And if you don't get that, boy, you got Mandalorian and Grogu, you got Mandalorian and Grogu again, you got Grogu again. I mean, they're on the poster 3 or 4 times, which is a little bit odd. Plus, everything in the middle is just saying Mandalorian and Grogu. So, wow, a little too much as far as I'm concerned. Now, as I was looking at this, I started thinking, okay, Smarty Pants, what would you do differently? And this is where I would go. Looking at the theme of the poster, looking at the theme of the teaser trailer, one of the most dramatic things in the teaser trailer, as far as I'm concerned, was the explosion with the AT-AT when it blew up and Mando flew away. So I think that should be the central action piece of the poster, and things should fit and be organized around it. So for me, this is a very rough, quick sketch. You can kind of make out, if you can read my chicken scratch, little Mando and Grogu on top, the AT-AT, and then you can kind of see a foreshortened Mando and Grogu kind of flying at us. And this is the way at the bottom. I'm just kind of roughly figuring out, okay, this is what I would do. So then I took my little thumbnail and I revised it a little bit. I started plotting and planning where I would put the action pieces of this poster to give it a little more drama. And so here I've got the AT-AT up top exploding into the background. I want to see some motion lines to see where Mando is flying forward with Grogu in his hands, almost like he just rescued him. So a really bold, dramatic action shot. And then I decided, playing around with the composition, that it'd be better to put Mando and Grogu, the title, at the bottom, and then make room, on the sides you could see for some floating heads, which are typical of these types of posters. And so if I add in a few of those things, you can kind of see how I would do it, how I would put it together. So this, to me, is more dramatic, more interesting, and really sells the story. Plus, I feel like you really need to do a Star Wars treatment to the title. You know, Mandalorian, that frame, Star Wars around the frame, a little bit better in my mind than what we saw with the original. All right, so that's where I think they could go. Obviously, Lucasfilm, Disney, they're not calling me and they went their own way. But I really think they need to look back a little bit more to the heritage of the great art that someone like Drew Struzan has done for them and look at other great illustrators in the vein of these Saturday morning serials and tighten up what they're doing. And if I find out that they're using AI or some other, you know, you know, digital fakery like that, I'm going to be really disappointed because there are hundreds of very talented artists that they could hire on a dime, get them turned around, and get some beautiful art. And if Disney isn't hiring them to do that, that's a tragedy. All right. That's my thoughts. Hope to hear from you guys. Let me know what you think. See you around.